Hey, what the hell are you doing walking around dressed like Star Wars?
It's Comic-Con, you idiot. We're going to the Javits Center.
Well, you're the idiots, because you three guys would never be walking together.
Yeah, you're his boss, and you two guys are enemies.
Yeah, bite me, Captain Kirk.
Hey, whoa, come on. No, that's Star Trek.
Yeah, that's two different franchises.
Yeah, sorry, guys. She doesn't know.
Nah, it's okay. I'm sorry you have to deal with that.
Let's go.
Oh, hey, come on. It's not worth it, man. It's not worth it. Not worth it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Fanzone Debate. We are here for a very exciting match in this title picture we have going on. We got Robert Castner going up against Amaru Moses. I'm looking forward to this. Both players having very successful times in the Fanzone Debate. Both are title contenders now at this point. So very excited to see what they do coming off of their previous matches. I believe this is the first time we're seeing Robert since he lost in his title attempt against Brian last year. And then the last time we saw Rue, I believe was the tournament or right before the tournament. I'm trying to remember. No, he played Coho. That was one of the best matches of last season. I can't believe I forgot that. So very excited. I got Mark and Brian here to join me on the judging for this one. Let's get into the match. So we're going to bring in the players, Rue and Robert, and here's how the game is going to work. So they drafted categories from Fandom and General Movies. We gave them questions based on those categories, and they are going to debate those questions tonight before our very souls. So each player is going to get a minute to open their argument, followed by a 5-minute freeform, followed by a 1-minute closing at the end of the debate. Mark, Brian, and I will write on our boards who we thought won the debate. 2 out of 3 votes wins you a point. First person to 3 points wins the match. Gentlemen, any questions as we get into this one?
Nah.
No, it's debate stuff, right? So
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
All right, let's do it. Okay, we are going to kick this one off with the first category, which was drafted by Robert. It was drafted in the category of horror. The question is, what is the scariest moment in a James Wan directed horror film? Robert, because you drafted this, you get to go first. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
I think there's been a shift in time of what horror movies are trying to do to consider to be scary and how those feelings are inspired in the masses who go see those movies. But James Wan's really attempted to kind of bring those feelings back into suspense and tension. And I don't think any other scene in one of his horror movies generates that kind of unease like the hide and clap scene in the original Conjuring. It's been established in the course of the film that they play this game, hide and clap, like a hide and seek Marco Polo combo. And there's a point where the matriarch of the family, Carolyn's trying to find a noise that she hears as a hide and clap. She thinks it's her kids, but she ends up being locked in the basement. And when she's trapped down there, it doesn't seem like there's any like corporeal form down there. She sees some haunting stuff, but then she goes up and she tries to relieve herself of the scariness on the stairs. She lights a match, goes out, lights another match, and then all of a sudden, some disembodied hands appear right behind her. Clap, clap, goes to dark. It's very scary. It's very unsettling. You don't expect anything like that.
Time. All right. We're going to move over to Amaru. 1 minute when you start talking.
Jump scares can be really scary, especially when they're earned. They set up the mood, the atmosphere, and they present this fight or flight feeling in you that frightens the crap out of you. But no jump scare, no matter how earned, and those two reactions live up to how scary a moment of being frozen in place gives you that amount of just fright and scare, as they similar to what happens in The Conjuring 2 when Vera Farmiga's daughter points to in her home hallway and you see Valak right there, the nun, clear as day, walk into a room. So James Wan takes the camera, first person point of view, and walks it down the hallway slowly, opens the door she went into, and there's just enough light shining through that you're like, I kind of see things, I kind of see don't. We walk in and Vera Farmiga sees a picture, and then they turn the camera, and right behind her head, you're like, what Is that Valak, or is that the scary ass picture that Patrick Wilson did earlier in the movie? I don't know. She goes up, she turns on the light. It's actually the painter, and you're like, fuck you.
All right, guys. 5-minute freeform when one of you starts talking. I will throw up the 1-minute warning when the time comes. And if I feel like you're talking too much and not giving your opponent enough time, I will throw up the let your opponent talk. Don't make me do that. It'll make me sad. And then I have to send Nick to your house. So 5 minutes when one of you starts.
So it's interesting because I thought you were doing the extended part of that. So I'm going to have to backtrack a little bit. But here's what I'll say. I'll say that in The Conjuring 1, in the hide and clap scene, James Wan sort of sets the mood and the tone in how it is that he uses the camera and the sound design of non-expectation. Like, there's a hide and clap thing happening, but you think at that point it's already been removed because she's seen all the haunting stuff that's happened. And then it just comes out of nowhere. And it's funny because James Wan does this thing where he takes like old-timey things and he makes them scary because they're thrust into a horror movie and something that's present. I would say your scene, I know that you had mentioned about Frozen and that we use the camera angles and everything, but I think it's a little undercut because we know that Valak is there at the beginning. And I think it's a little funny how, like Judy points it out, it seems a little silly at the time. So I think there's just a little bit of an undercutting of what happens with the painting coming up, as opposed to mine, where you don't know what's going to happen and it does come out of nowhere.
Actually, for me, that makes it even more scary because we finally get to the point, the scary moment where we see the painting, or we don't know if it's Valak or the painting behind her. You're frozen even more than the daughter, more than Vera Farmiga, because you're like, I don't know which one that is because that painting came up earlier. And now you're like, I don't know what they're going to do. Are they going to do a jump scare? Are they going to just have her? What are they going to do? And it makes it even better because they don't jump scare you at that moment when they turn off the light. They just switch from what looks like Valak to the painting, and you are further now in a further moment of even more terror because you're like, I know she's there. So what the hell is going to happen? And I think that's the scariest moment, when you don't know what's going to happen and you are like tense and extremely tense. The problem with your scene, I haven't seen the movie. I watched the scene. I knew it was coming because it's in the trailer. And that's the biggest issue. Like it's just like any other jump scare where they set you up with lights and shadows, just like my scene. But the difference is it doesn't go to the jump scare that will make you go, okay, that was cool. It puts you in a state of intense, like waiting to see what happens. And that is much scarier than a jump scare I've seen in a trailer and a whole bunch of other movies.
Can I ask you a clarifying question just about yours? We're not taking the part where it grips the painting and comes at her, or the sound? No. It's just when you turn around, you see her, that moment with that, and then the light. Everything else is just set up for my moment. Okay, just wanted to make sure. All right. What I will say about yours is, I will say that if you're looking at scary moments relative to what happens in The Conjuring 2, I get more freaked out in general by anything that happens with Bill Wilkins or the Crooked Man, especially when Patrick Wilson goes in near the end and his face has been burned and he sees the zoetrope, the spinny thing, and the Crooked Man just appears out of nowhere, which we don't expect. I find those a little bit scarier because of what I had mentioned before, is that a lack of expectation. I know what you're saying about that The Conjuring, it got ruined in the trailer, but I think it's because of how it is that they set up the relationship with the mother and the kids and that game that they play. You kind of get lulled into a false sense of security with it because you're not exactly sure when it is that jumps. Some things have been happening, but you're not sure that you're actually going to get to a point where like a corporeal form of spirit is actually going to come out. Yours, like I said, you see Valak, so you get a sense that something is happening. And again, I just think that there's scarier moments dotted out through Conjuring 2.
Luckily, I'm not arguing against those scary moments. But they also sound like jump scares. I'm arguing against your moment that even if I didn't see the trailer, it's also a jump scare where in that moment, sure, you're like, but then you like laugh or you cry. And jump scares don't always scare everybody. You're just like, oh, okay, I knew one was coming because they set it up. With mine, again, I find it way more frightening where you don't know what's going to happen. And the setup of Valak being there means that, wait, I know she's there. So when I'm sitting there in that moment of, oh my gosh, is that real? Is that her? Is that not? That is much more scary. That is much more, again, the freeze reaction in your body is much more terrifying than the fight or flight reaction in your body, because you don't know what to do. And because of everything that surrounds the moment, that makes it much more like, I have no idea what's going on. Your moment at that time is much more scary than I think it's coming. It's probably, there it goes. Okay, cool. I'm good.
I think fight or flight is the most instinctual bastion of fear that we can have. So I think having it be the quintessential part of what makes my scene scary doesn't make it diluted. It's just what makes us humans.
Okay. We are going to start with Rue on the closing for this one. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
The fun thing about that instinctual thing in your body that everybody hears about fight or flight is that you're waiting for the fight or flight. And what nobody really remembers, or we often forget in real life and in movies, is that it's actually fight, flight, or freeze. And you don't know you're going to freeze. And that is the scariest thing, when you are frozen in time, expecting, like, I know something is there. I know I'm in danger. And then when they turn around and they confuse us, saying, holy shit, I know that could be Valak, but holy shit, there's the painting in the front, but now the painting in the back. I know that could be the picture. I don't know which one it is. And in that moment in time, you are no more scared than you are ever going to be in a quick instant of fight or flight and hide or clap that is, again, already seen in the trailer. It's just like any other jump scare that's coming around. You're not going to be more scared in that moment when you go, because one, some people don't even get scared by jump scares. You are expecting it to come, and it's a quick, like, oh yeah, and then you might laugh when it's mine. You don't know what's happening at all.
Okay, we're going to go over to Robert. Robert, you have 1 minute to close when you start talking.
I think if you're thinking about cool ideas of scary moments or things that are most confusing, I think you could understand why Rue would choose the painting of the nun and the Conjuring 2. I think he's downplaying what a fight or flight moment means. I think it's not just like anything else. I don't care that it was in the trailer. It's still scary because of how it's set up to that point, and that you think it's just a game. And then James Wan does this well, that it's not just a game. And it seems something that's so innocuous, something like a hide and seek, but then just hands come out of nowhere and it turns, and you think she's safe because she's down there by herself, but she's not really down there by herself. And that concludes that. The nun painting, as I said, I think I don't feel frozen in that moment. I feel like there's a funny moment leading to Valak guiding them into the room. And then we learn later on that it is a vision, so it doesn't feel quite as real. I know we're just talking about the moment, but that does play an effect. We know what's happening in mine is real. What's Rue's is just a vision. Doesn't mean as much.
Time. Okay. Let's bring in the judges.
God, I hope that's the only time I'm confused about what we were talking about.
You won't be you aren't the first, you won't be the last to
Half my argument.
I remember my first fight against Kirk in my Freddy versus Jason kill one, and I still to this day don't know what his kill is at all.
Hey, at least you argued your choice that you presented, not just made up some bullshit the day you showed up.
True.
That's great.
That is accurate. Okay. Looks like you guys are ready. Good start. Not too many fireworks. I feel like everything was pretty it was a clean fight. I liked it. I went with Robbie Casts, and I think that the point that kind of tipped me over to Robert at the end was the whole point of like him saying, I don't care that it was in the trailer. It's still a scary moment, and it's set up to be a scary moment, even if you see it coming. I think that was a good point. I think that's kind of what tipped it for me. I was kind of in the middle the whole time, and I feel like both did a really good job of setting up their scene and explaining why it was scary in different ways. Like it was different kinds of scary. And I felt like Robert just on the edge just got me a little bit more on scariness. Brian.
Yes, it was a very clean fight, right down to asking and answering clarifying questions in the middle of the debate. So that was fun.
I felt bad because I didn't want him to get the same thing I did with Kirk. So
I will say that I also did not feel like the fact that it was in the trailer that didn't really hit it for me, because something can still be, like you said, it can still be scary even if it was in the trailer. But then also I think that when Robert was saying that when you find out information later on that kind of frames this question, I don't think that really affects it either. We're just talking about the scary moment in the moment. I kind of thought the same as Tim. I went with Robert. I don't think it was like a slam dunk or anything. It was a very, very, very close match. I think just Robert just set his up a little bit better for me. How the play in the game, it kind of led up to it and kind of led your expectations. Then all of a sudden it turns on you. Just that it really hit for me.
Okay, Mark, your vote doesn't count. Where would you have gone and why?
Yep, thanks, week. Robert. Kind of for most of what you guys are saying. I think the big hang up for me on this one because that I did think at least the trailer part was kind of a good swing of something that Robert had to have an answer for, and honestly, I think he had a pretty solid one for it. That it's built up in the film. It's a scary moment on its own. Like, kind of doesn't really matter.
Okay. All right. So first point goes to Robert. We are going to move on to question 2, which was drafted by Rue in the category of epic adventures. Your question is, who is the best character in a mummy film? We are going to get started with Rue. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
I think by far and away the best character is Benny in the original Mummy, because he's introduced and he seems to be like any other slimy Weasley character. But you find out very quickly he's might be like those characters, but he's not one dimensional like a Alfred Lickspittle or a Dreamer One-Tongue and just slimy. He is not the person you love to hate. He's the person you love to love, because you love how much fun he has in it, how hilarious he is. But on top of that, how intelligent and how thoughtful he is. Not only is he always just so Weasley, so able to get out of things, and you just kind of like, dude, what are you trying to do? And then he does things like take all those necklaces out in front of the mummy and speaks all the different languages to try to get away with things. And you start laughing. And he's the one that gets out of the tomb before they open the chest, because he's intelligent enough to know that, like, I'm the one that's going to get my comeuppance. I'm not getting it now. And that whole scene, usually when somebody says they're getting a comeuppance, they're like, no. And he sits there and says, really? I love that.
Let's go over to Robert. Robert, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
Little did we know that in 1999, as a movie-going public, we were ready for a period piece action-adventure romp that combines Universal monsters with that of an epic of the scale of Lawrence of Arabia. And The Mummy filled that void. And the whole backbone of the film in the original Mummy is to have a leading man who charms the pants off of you with roguish good looks and moxie that's reserved for men of a certain generation. So it's a throwback to guys like Errol Flynn, Clark Gable, all of those people of movie industry's golden age. And that's why I picked Rick O'Connell, played by Brendan Fraser, in the original Mummy. It's the first time he's taken a step like this. He's the driving engine to the film. It's not just that he kicks so much ass, is that he gets a lot of moments to be comedic, like looks like you're on the wrong side of the river, when he tells the warden to stay on the boat, when he jumps off, the warden just stays there. But it's also that he's caring and warm, and he builds a nice rapport with Evelyn. It's that he's also smart and intelligent and experienced. He understands like what the Book of Amun-Ra is about. He knows what the Magi are about. He has all this experience and love, and he builds it together.
And yeah, strike it from the record. All right, guys, 5 minute freeform when one of you starts talking.
So my key thing about Benny is in that scene where Evelyn tells him that, people like you are always going to get your comeuppance. Most of those times, those kind of characters are like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm like, and he sits there and he's like, are you serious? He always just goes against your expectations to make things more fun, more hilarious, and just throws you for a loop, where he is the one person that makes everybody in the scene better. And that's my key thing about Rick O'Connell. One of two. The biggest thing about Rick is he is never the most interesting or best character on screen. Evelyn is always better when he's on there. Ardeth Bay is always better. And his best scenes are when he is with Benny. The wrong side of the river, Benny's the one that kicks it off with him. All the little, it's always with Benny where he gets those funny one-liners, whereas Benny is the one who comes in and steals every single scene that he is in because of his intelligence, because of his hilarity, because of his weaselness, and you never think you're going to love a character that slimy, whereas with Rick, I'm going to bring it up, if it was Indiana Jones, it would be better. And that's what we're thinking about all the time, especially because everybody else in the scene is always better than him.
I'm not going to deny that there's a magnetism to Ben. He's the foil. I'm not going to deny that he's not funny. What I will deny is that I think there's moments outside of being with Benny that Rick shines. I think the moment when they find him in prison with Evelyn and Jonathan is better. He doesn't have a lot of moments where he's by himself. I mean, he kicks a lot of ass in the French Foreign Legion section at the beginning, and Benny runs away like the scared little bastard he is. But I think, and by that, even in doing something like that, where he manages to survive, maybe not wholly by his own metrics or like his own skill, the Magi, he manages to build like respect from the Magi just from the idea of being able to survive that and come back and survive again. So I think, again, it's not just about how he's portrayed as the hero, because he's got a lot of emotional depth. And yeah, it comes out with his interactions with Evelyn, with Jonathan, with Benny. But he's able to kind of have a hero's mentality, but he kind of plays off of each other as like an other guy type of guy. And I think that's something to be respected when you're trying to lead this movie and be the character that drives everything going forward.
And again, that's like just the same kind of thing we would see in what we're wishing he actually was, like an Indiana Jones. And everybody thinks he's an Indiana Jones knockoff because he seems very charming, but there's a lot of times where he's really stiff. He seems like he's the brave one, but there's a lot of times where Evelyn's just as brave, or Ardith Bay is doing things like killing himself or seemingly killing himself to have Jonathan have the funny moments and Rick save the day. Rick is supposed to be that driving force because he is the main guy. Benny is the one who, in every scene he's in, you're like, oh my gosh, I want him back. At the end of the sandstorm, and Benny goes, oh, it's beautiful. Bastards. You love him then. He's the one again that kicks off the wrong side of the river confrontation. He's the one that has probably the best scene in the entire movie, getting the respect of the mummy himself with all those different religions going from one to the next to the next. And it has the most intense scene at the end of the film right before he dies. And you kind of hope he makes it, because even though he's slimy and even though you love to hate what he is, you love him so much, you're like, this is a foil or antagonist that would make Rick O'Connell better throughout a whole lot of movies because how much we love him.
Okay. You said that we just wish that Rick was Indiana Jones. I could say that I wish Benny was Belloc or Tet or a combo of them, or Donovan from the other Indiana Jones movies. I mean, you could say that about anybody. Benny's funny, but there are villains who are funny who manage to be quite a foil for the hero based on their humor. It's not akin or very unique to Benny. What I will say is that it's important imperative for the sake of this argument. What I'll say is that at every turn, Rick beats the shit out of him, or beats him in general. He beats him on the boat. He beats him when he manages to subdue him in Egypt, and he manages to beat him at the end, even by Benny being kind of stupid and setting off his own trap. And then he helps Rick and the others sort of. They were reserved to come out of this situation with nothing, and Benny's the one who sort of set it up for them so that they could succeed. So he ends up losing at the end because he loses all of the time. Again, he's funny and he's a good foil, but he's not as unique as anybody else. Rick is someone who is caring, has emotional depth, more so than you would think in this type of movie, and he's intelligent. He just comes across as a bro type, but everywhere that he needs to figure out a way to use his mind to get out of it, he does. And I think that's something to be respected with someone who's in this type of movie, this mummy movie in Egypt where he's shooting mummies. It's weird.
Okay. We are going to start closings with Robert. Robert, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
I think when most people would look at Rick O'Connell in The Mummy, they would think this is the typical hero role. But there's humor, grace, charm that Rick has is brought out by Brendan Fraser. It's brought through by his commitment. The whole movie rides on him to make it entertaining, exciting, and profitable. Yes, he is the hero and he's the backbone. He's supposed to be that. And yes, he plays well off of others. He's not in many scenes by himself. So he has to be able to figure that out that way. As in, he has a leading man moxie, but he has like an other guy, day player type of situation with how he acts. Benny, he's funny. Yes. Does he get over on some people sometimes? Sure. But in the end, he gets his ass kicked by Rick, by the group constantly. He's slimy. He's weaselly. He doesn't grow at all. He's kind of like Loki in Thor Ragnarok. Thor says it, you never really grow or evolve. Benny doesn't. He does the same thing for self-preservation all of the time. It never changes. We just find it funny because of how it is he goes about the business of getting it done. But Rick is the driving force. He is important.
Move over to Rue. Rue, you have 1 minute to close when you start talking.
Robert said it right before we went to his final thing. Benny is the one who sets everything up. He said he gets his ass beat. You want to see him get his ass beat. You want to see him get away with it. You want to see when he runs out. You want to see him slide me. And we don't see villains who we want to be in every scene, to be the punching bag for everybody. He talked about Belloc and Taut. None of them are the same. None of them are any way like Benny because they are not willing to get as slimy and dirty. Again, if you would have said an Alfred, if you would have said a Grima, you would have had some similarities, but none of them, we hate those guys. There is not a villain you can think of off the top of your head very quickly that you're like, I hate him, or I should hate him, but I don't, because Benny is so damn charming in his weaselness and in his sliminess, and he makes every scene and every person around him better. While again, Rick O'Connell is supposed to be the charming one. He's supposed to be the driving force. But the entire time you're looking at him and you're saying, Indiana Jones is better. He's the one who would make this movie better if he went there. And if I didn't have that, if we replaced him with Indy, it'd be a better movie.
Okay. I'm going to bring in the judges.
Hooray for mummy questions, you know? Like,
yes.
They exist.
Absolutely love it.
When I posed this, people were like, yeah, but Rick was in like 2 and 3. And I'm like, we're just focusing on one movie.
Just
because I wouldn't pick him if we were focusing on all of them. Jesus. I hate him in the Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. I hate him. I think they did him dirty.
They did that entire franchise dirty with that movie.
It's true. But like every time I'm watching Brendan Fraser, I'm like, why is he just yelling all the time?
Scorpion King is better than that movie.
That's what
I actually agree with that statement. I didn't hear. I was thinking beforehand, so I didn't hear anything you said before that. But okay,
all
right,
Robert. Are you showing my sadness right now? Wearing your team that just got eliminated. Your Steelers.
No, I was wearing this.
Okay.
Okay. Mark, you're gonna kick us off.
Okay. Yeah, I went with Rue. I think just in general, his portrayal of Benny just sounds like a more interesting character, and he just in general he just sounds like just the perfect side piece to kind of throw along this adventure, and he just feels more colored in than I think kind of we got from Rick O'Connell, which I think just you can at the very least argue that Rick O'Connell sounds like just a version of another action hero.
Okay. It's gonna come to Brian because I went with Robert. And I was thinking about it seemingly longer because I agree with what Mark was saying, but I thought that Robert actually had a good what's the word? A takedown of that and saying like, you could literally say that about anybody, and bringing in like other examples. I know that Rue then brought up like Belloc and whatever in his closing, but I feel like both, again, kind of similar to the first question, both did a good job of kind of explaining why their characters were good. And I felt like, for me, Robert gave me a character that I would be way more interested in watching than Rue's character. And this is coming from someone who's, I've seen this movie one time. I'm gonna rewatch it very soon because it's in fandom. But just based off the arguments, I leaned Robert. Brian, I ask you at least once a match. Am I crazy?
And every time I tell you the same thing, yes.
Yes. Yes.
But that's not necessarily because of this opinion, though, just in general.
Yes.
We're tied. Vote for Rue. A lot of the same reasons Mark said. But I will say, I think that, while it is easy to just take any character and try and compare them to a character from another franchise, I think that Rue did a good job of pointing out how, while Rick does fit kind of the archetype of Indiana Jones, it's like basically like an inferior version of Indiana Jones, whereas his character, I think Benny he did a good job explaining why he's more unique. There isn't really a direct comparison to these other characters, and so that kind of brings something new and fresh and exciting to the character.
Yeah. All right. So we are all tied up 1-1. Your next question was drafted by Robert in the category of Fight Night. Ooh, I'm excited about this one. I forgot this was the question. Which Rocky or Creed film has the best training montage? All right, we're going to kick it off with Robert. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
In past Rocky films, when you watch training montages, it was usually reserved to see what Rocky was doing from his side. You had very little insight into what their opponents were doing. Very little. We knew we were going to hear it going to fly now. We know he was going to go through Philadelphia. It was going to be fun. The Rocky IV training montage in Russia between Drago and between Rocky is so unique because we spend as much time with what's going on with Drago's regimen as we do with Rocky, making sure we get the juxtaposition of how Rocky's more naturalistic approach compares in getting his body ready with Drago's more futuristic and medically enhanced workouts. And from this, we get a sense of importance for Rocky, how big this is to overcome as his greatest challenge. Training in this unfamiliar place with little support, with an impossible opponent to beat. All the imagery is iconic: mountain climbing, chopping wood, lifting the bag of rocks. When you think about Rocky training montages beyond what was in the original, you think of what happens in Rocky IV because of how it is that they compare what's going on between Rocky and Drago, and that's what makes it unique and interesting.
Okay, we're going to go over to Rue. Rue, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
Training montages are supposed to motivate you and hype you up, and there's no training montage that has a combination of music, the variety of different training, and that motivation, like the the one before the rematch in Creed 2, where once you see Donnie hit the hammer into the ground, the violins start to hit, and Rocky's backing away, starting to say harder, harder. You see that Donnie has been through it, and that's what makes this montage so much better than the rest, because on top of all those great things that are in the Rocky IV one and this one actually tells a story. You get to see the actual depth of pain that Donnie is going through. With he can't do that, he can't take getting hit in the stomach. He gets the one-on-one fights he can't take. But on top of that, we go over to Ivan and his father, and in the few scenes in that first part of it where he's hitting the shit out of Ivan and giving him looks, you see his story and you know what's going on with him. And then once we hit that middle portion where the soul singer comes in and then they mix Gotta Fly Now with the rest of the thing to get motivated, it's all up from there.
All right. Well, these are two great scenes. 5-minute freeform, but one of you starts talking.
Rue, when I was thinking of Creed trilogies and training montages, I honestly just thought you would gravitate towards what happened in Creed 1 because it's the homage to Rockies 1 and 2, and that's the one I think of the most. I had to remember what happens in this one, and honestly, looking back on it, it seems like an imitation of my montage. You could substitute out a lot of different things: snow and ice for the desert, barn for the sands, the saw for the sledgehammer, and then it's just a different Drago. It kind of feels very similar to what happens with Rocky IV. And you mentioned like design, music. I will say that preferences aside, the music in Rocky IV, it slaps. It's not just about the Hearts on Fire, but it's about Vince DiCola's training montage, which I think is comparable to Gotta Fly now. In comparison to the ASAP Rocky song and the beats that hit up, again, it's preference, but I think the music is more iconic in mine, and I think it makes you hype just as well as seeing what happens and how Rocky tries to get his body ready as opposed to what happens with Donnie and getting his body.
Just like the movie where people might say the movie's an imitation of Rocky IV, but actually it takes Rocky IV, the montage, and makes it better because the issue with yours is that it takes it. If you look at that montage, you're like, oh, okay, we got a man versus a machine thing here, and it fumbles the opportunity to even consider talking about what actually happened in the movie and Apollo dying. Like, there's none of that in that damn montage. And that's why mine's is better, because you actually get a step up. You don't just get the regular, oh, it's a fight here, it's a fight there, there's music here, there's music. There's story in my montage. So you can see that Donnie is at his lowest. That middle part shows when he falls on the ground, when he's running, you shows how bad of a low he's at. And then you see the scene where he's talking to Bianca and his daughter, and you see him getting better and better and better as the music mixes with Gotta Fly now. Again, not an imitation, taking what was there and making it better. And also having not just the incorrect story that they have with Drago in the original one, where you just think, oh, it's another guy he's fighting against. And by the way, when they show that needle in his arm, I was taken out after that 7-minute montage. Like, what was that about? What does that have to do with anything? You actually get the tale between the Drago and their son to show that they actually have an impact in this movie as well. And the montage is so good because it does everything you want every montage to do, but it also elevates the movie and elevates it as a storytelling item itself.
They do the needle in the arm because they bring up prior that they do news reports about, and they ask Ivan and his wife about using anabolic steroids and Russian doping. So they have to do that as a means to tell you that, you know, what they said was a falsity, and that of course he's doing anabolic steroids. That's why he can hit so hard. I don't feel like yours is an elevation. I feel like, and there, I want to push back. You've watched Rocky. If you're just watching the montage, you're crazy. But if you've watched Rocky up to this point, you know that Rocky is the cause of Creed's death. And you know that he has that scene with Duke before where he says, like, I felt like I lost a part of myself, but you're going to be the one. And that's built into that. You feel that through the emotionality of like, usually, like in Rocky 3, when he was going through initially before Adrian talks to him, he's sucking at his the montage, and then it happens. He is laser focused because he knows that he's the cause of that. We have the scene where he posts up Drago's picture and then he snatches it away. Like, that's built in from there. And then again, how it's comparable and how it is that they're doing their training and how much time we spend with Drago, that tells the story of how impossible it feels to beat this kind of opponent with his, you know, futuristic type of training, and how much time that we spend on seeing how they compare with their training montages. Like
the problem with that, though, again, is that I know they had the needle in there beforehand, but what that ends up doing is that when you don't have the answer to that question, you're like, ooh, is it him or is it not? But once they show that, it actually kind of kills Drago as a character. So you're like, oh, wait a second. So we only killed so your montage not only motivates, but it also makes your villain a little less menacing because you needed something to get up to that point. I don't want my montage to diminish my villain. I want my montage to make them better. That's one of the points where, like, again, it makes the Drago family as important in the movie, or not just a throwaway archetypal villain. And that's why I love my montage so much, because it does what both of ours does. It has great music. It has great use of it, but it actually allows us to take what we got good in Rocky IV and say, this is what they messed up at. Mine elevates it to a point where it's just more than a montage. It's a storytelling thing and a motivational hype music.
Okay, we're gonna go over to Rue first. Rue, you have 1 minute to close when you start talking.
Montage after montage after montage have a lot of different tropes. You got different ways to train, different points where you're seeing the villain. Some do it more than others. You have different great music throughout. Whether you keep at a crescendo of going from the bottom to the top, which mine does a hell of a lot better to tell the story, and that's what makes mine so much better than his. Because just like the movie, this montage takes what is really good about the Rocky IV montage, the telling the story of the villain, the showing how much it means to Creed, to show he's coming from the bottom, but it allows you, as in those minutes, it allows you to tell a story of not only Creed, but of Drago. It elevates Creed as a person. It elevates Rocky as a person. And when you finally see him, instead of falling behind the car, running hella fast with the combination of hip hop and Gotta Fly Now, you are hyped, motivated, love the villain, love the character. Whereas in Rocky IV, you're like, so this dude isn't as good as he is, and that was just a regular montage.
I'm gonna let it slide. We're gonna go over to Robert. Robert, you have 1 minute when you start.
We knew Donnie was coming from the bottom. That's the whole point of Creed. And when we're talking about running fast ahead of like cars, that's the same thing he does in the streets of Philadelphia, running ahead of the street bikes and all the bikes on the thing. So it's already been done. When you look at elevated circumstances, music, comparable scenes between hero and villain, how indelible it is for montages in the Rocky universe, I don't think you can find a better one than what happens in Rocky IV. It does everything you want to accomplish. It's so emotionally charged. You feel really hype. Rocky doesn't give up. He's got the eye of the tiger the whole time. You know why? Because he's emotionally involved. He takes Drago's picture off. We see what's happening between the two of them simultaneously because we know we're keeping with Ivan because it's as important. This feels as hard of a mountain to climb because of how it is they do that. The imagery that sticks in my head between the two, I don't think it means anything. I think the storytelling, it's not elevated for me in Creed 2 because it seems like a retread of what happened in Rocky 4. And I feel more hyped with what happens with Rocky. He wouldn't puke. He wouldn't puke in his montage.
I'll also let it slide. All right. Brian, you good? You want to leave and come back or you want to wait?
I'll see between questions.
Okay, sounds good. It's the eye of the tiger. It's the thrill of the fight. Having just rewatched these recently, you both picked great picks, but I thought for sure someone was going to pick something else.
I was very close to Rocky 3, but
that's what. Oh man, you just made me want to watch them again. Like I just watched them, and I want to watch them again.
I was like, it's got to be Creed 1, right? And then I was like, wait a second, okay, maybe not.
He learns
the montage in 3 when they bring Ivan into the ring. Like, oh my god. Anyway, or not Ivan.
Silver, I guess.
No.
Wait.
I was talking about not Ivan.
Go ahead.
Why can I not think of Ivan's son's name? You just said it. Like
Victor.
Thank you. They bring him into the training ring. Like that whole scene is great. Anyway,
Creed 3, yes.
Creed 3, yes. Oh, did I say Rocky?
You did.
Yeah, you said Rocky 3.
Not bad. Brian, you're starting? Yes.
Yeah, I almost voted for the wrong person. I had the right montage in my head, but the wrong person. I went with Robert. I think he paints a little better picture for me about, how his is kind of the more iconic training sequence. It's kind of the first one they had, like where it showed, the good guy and the bad guy and kind of juxtaposing them and seeing the difference between them. And how Creed 2 was doing that as well, but it was kind of really just kind of imitating his, even if it was trying to do something a little bit different with it. It was building off of his for sure. And I also think he did a good job of pushing back, like when Rue came at him with the needle shot and things like that. He did a good job push back on defense.
Okay, Mark.
Same, Robert. I think a lot of this came down to the defense really, like as Rue tried pretty hard just to kind of shut down Robert's scene, and Robert had a pretty solid answer for all of them. I think pretty much, namely how like Rue tried to say like his scene had more emotional involvement and Robert's didn't, and Robert kind of came up with several examples. Like I don't know what you're talking about. It's got this moment, and you can tell like this is different than the prior Rocky montages.
Okay, my vote doesn't count. I went Amaru. I clearly am on the last two at least off of Brian and Mark, which is fair. But I actually thought Rue won this pretty handedly in my opinion. But heard something different, I guess, which is fair. I just really liked what Rue had to say about his. I thought that him, actually, I thought the taking of that like whole needle thing, like Robert fought back against it, and I thought it was a weird thing at first. Like, why are we talking about this? But then Rue kind of flipped it and was like, it makes you look at Drago differently. Like, he's not a character that you actually like anymore. And I thought the emotional weight and the music and the bring in that he was talking about from his scene was really strong, and Robert's defense on that was like, well, yeah, he's at the bottom, so of course it's emotional. It's like, well, yeah, that it's emotional and it works and it's good. So I thought Rue won it, but that is why we have 3 judges. So Robert is up 2-1, and we're gonna take a quick break. We're back. Brian is mobile, and we're going to move on to the next question, the final question of the prep round. Rue needs to hit this in order to send it to the bonus. The category is actors and actresses. Your question is, what film from 1990 or later has the best performance by a single actor or actress? All right, Rue, you drafted this. You get to go first. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
The Academy absolutely fucked it by not giving arguably the greatest actor of all time and his greatest performance ever, the Oscar for Denzel for Malcolm X. When you get Denzel for one of the only times you could probably not say it was Denzel playing Denzel, because he is actually capturing the essence of one of the most complicated, magnanimous, and giant figures in American history, and actually taking over. Whenever you think of Malcolm X, you kind of think of, oh, what you see Denzel, and you don't see Denzel as Denzel. But not only does he take his that character or that person, he does it damn near in 3 different movies, going from the slick and mischievous and dangerous Detroit Red to the absolutely powerful and inspiring Malcolm X when he joins the Muslims, not just with his speeches, but just with the looks. Just think about how he gets Brother Robert out of the courtroom and just stares at the police officer, to the absolute just the frustration and love he has with Betty when he's trying to get away from the Muslims, all the way up until he's assassinated. It is an absolutely epic performance.
Okay, we're going to move over to Robert. Robert, 1 minute when you start talking.
I think over the course of the last 3 decades, there's certain indelible roles inextricably linked with the actors or actresses who portrayed them. You can't separate what you see on screen and who played them, no matter if there's been different iterations or attempts in other mediums. And for my money, none other has transcended that particular film to the extent that Anthony Hopkins did as Hannibal Lecter in The Silence of the Lambs. With him, I think it's a matter of quality over quantity. He was only on screen for about 25 minutes, but he managed in that time to be worthy of Best Actor consideration and of a win in the shortest amount of time garnered for anybody. He's only the 2nd person ever and still to win being a Best Actor in a horror movie. Everything that he does, the cadence and rhythm with which he talks, how he plays games, how he's very charming and terrifying all at the same time. It's something that you haven't seen, and something that you really haven't seen since. It's so iconic with how it is you combine what he did in that movie and the performance and how it's regarded in history, that I don't think there's anything better.
Time. God damn it, guys. All right. 5 minute freeform when one of you starts talking.
Both of our performances are legendary and epic, but while yours transcends film, mine transcends film, history, and life. Again, you think Malcolm X, you actually, I'm like, wait a second, Denzel, Malcolm X, which one? And in 19 minutes of screen time of Anthony Hopkins, kind of doing the same Hello Clarice cadence and figure, and even when he kills the guard, when he silently does that, you could just hear him go, hello Clarice, hello Clarice. The same thing over 19 minutes. That's a lot harder than the transformative arc over 3 hours and 22 minutes, and not in damn near in every scene, not one time losing your interest, to have a completely different character in the middle of the movie, to even the 4th part in the prison that I haven't even talked about, of him transforming to the end of the movie. They don't compare, because it is so hard to not only play such a giant figure, but take it over, do so many things, be funny, be scary, be motivational, be inspiring, be frustrated, be loving. compared to your 19 minutes of great creepiness?
I think this is a hard job to compare because I think they're doing two different things over a greater period of time. Like the periods of time don't exist. Like it doesn't compare. While Denzel's incredible, I'm not going to say he's not incredible in the movie. He has a much larger canvas by which to paint. There's so much time and consideration with how he has to progress Malcolm X and what he gets to do that it's obvious that he has a lot in his sandbox in which to play with. In reality, I don't think what he does in Malcolm X, albeit being great, is that unique in comparison to what you would see in a biopic or a movie about a sprawling life journey for anybody else. I think you could see similar patterns, albeit experiential differences, with films like Raging Bull, Gandhi, Frida, Walk the Line. They all unveil the subject's journey and how they express that emotionality and the change between it. I just think that I don't think there's ever a downturn with what happens with Hopkins. You might say that it feels like the same, but I think it's subtle. But I think he can also ramp it up when he calls back to Clarice about Miggs and when he's probing. Everything has something behind it. I'm not sure I always feel like there's something behind it with Malcolm X, albeit there are times that there is. I don't feel that way all the time as I do with Hopkins.
In the 3 hours and 20 minutes of that screen time, there's usually got to be like, okay, there's like an hour in there where you kind of don't remember what's going on, but you remember everything, the little subtleness behind it, that little subtlety of being trying to act hard in front of West whatever Archie, Delroy Lindo, but you see the scare, the actual fear in his eyes when you see when he's trying to get Brother Johnson out of the courthouse and then out of the hospital. You see that like he is calm. And he is just calmly talking to the character, but the rage behind his eyes and everything. When he's talking to his wife and he's trying to be so mad at his wife because she doesn't want him to go out towards the end of the film because he might get assassinated. And you see that he's starting to yell and he's starting to ramp it up, but the love is still there, giving us then the entire frustration blowing up in that Denzel meme when everybody's angry. Everything you talk about that Anthony Hopkins is doing in that maybe slightly varied variation of kind of the same thing, Denzel is doing it in 3 different roles over 3 times, and that is such a harder performance than it is to do something really amazing in a short amount of time.
I would say it's comparing apples and oranges. I would say it is difficult to come across as that sort of iconic and that little of screen time. I will tell you that I did not watch Malcolm X before I watched things like One Night in Miami, but I do feel like based on what I had seen there with like what Kingsley Ben-Adir did in that movie, I lose a sense of playfulness with how he is near the end. I feel like I lose some of the exasperation and dread he's feeling because it feels very put on with regards to there's a lot of what's going on at the end is done through news press conferences and whatnot. So I lose sort of some of the emotionality I'd seen in what Kingsley Ben-Adir did, what Nigel Thatch did in Selma. And it's hard to compare. I think you could compare those, and I think that they do as adequate of a job. And then you mentioned that this is Denzel's best work. You could make arguments that it's not his best work necessarily. You could say movies like The Hurricane, Tragedy of Macbeth, they give you something different and not kind of a sprawling epic, but it's different and bears better fruit like Things in Training Day than something like Malcolm X did.
Anything you say in any other Denzel movie you can find in Malcolm X, the absolute not terror, the absolute power in that comes from his inspiration. And I'll get to the end scene in my final.
Okay, we're gonna go to Robert for his closing. 1 minute when you start talking.
Universal, when they tried to make sequels to Silence of the Lambs, tried to bring Anthony Hopkins back, even playing in a prequel, even though it was 11 years later, and how stupid that is because they knew how indelible Anthony Hopkins is in that role and how you can't see him outside of it. He's so part of the zeitgeist in people's minds as playing Hannibal Lecter. In that short amount of time, he does so much with his playfulness, with his humor, with his probing nature. He's always playing people against each other. He knows so much. And you feel that with not only how it is that he speaks and what he says, but what's behind the eyes, what's behind the cadence and the rhythms of how he speaks. Denzel is great in Malcolm X. I'm not going to say he isn't, but you can make arguments it's not his best role. There's elements that you can see that are missing. Like I said, dread, exasperation that I had seen in other people who had played Malcolm X before I watched Malcolm X that I don't necessarily as get. And this is based off an autobiography. There's a lot of which you can gain from playing a person like this as opposed to a fictional character. Anthony Hopkins, he's so indelible in that role, you can't see anybody else in it.
Okay. Oops. Stopwatch did not stop. Okay. We're going to go over to Rue. Rue, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
The end of the film in Malcolm X is the most emotional because it's the most scenes he has with Angela Bassett. And that's where you see that frustration and emotion with the arguments and scenes she has with her. The exasperation you're talking about when he's going away from the Muslims and talking to Elijah Muhammad, it's right there. The dread you're talking about, I already brought it up, when the dread you see in The Fake Facade, when he's Detroit Red talking to West Coast Archie, you're talking about, you could say it's not his best performance, but again, the power you see in Macbeth is what you see in Malcolm when he just does this. You talk about that there isn't many characters who in a little amount of time can do what Anthony Hopkins does, and he's so indelible in such a little time. I would claim that Obi-Wan Kenobi is just as different and critical in his movie in such a little time, that he is just as epic in his realm as Hannibal Lecter is in his. Anthony Hopkins transcends film as that role. Denzel Washington transcends film, life, history, and everything in his entire career because of what he did, never losing your interest in 3.5 hours.
Oy. Brian, you're no longer mobile.
Yeah, got the other thing finally booted up eventually, halfway through the debate.
All of a sudden, I looked down and I saw two Brians. I was very confused.
I was still listening to the debate here while I was logging on over here. And
what happened, Robert?
This ends badly for you either way, right?
Right. Though, based off what happened earlier, maybe not. Though you were the one who got me out, so I don't know.
That's true. I edited that last night. That's true. Okay. I'm ready. Are you guys?
Yeah.
Phenomenal. 2 of the best performances, 2 of the best movies. Like, great shit. Like, not 2 movies and performances I revisit often because I find them pretty challenging in the sense that the movies are tough, but they're so good. I went with Rue. I thought Rue. I don't think screen time necessarily dictates how good a performance is if there's more of it. If you have a small role but you're incredible and you make an impression, you can have the better performance over someone who's in it 3 hours. But I thought Rue was able to take Denzel's performance across the 3-hour threshold of Malcolm X. It explained really well why it worked, and it was so many different things. And Robert threw in a Hail Mary. In my opinion, it was a Hail Mary at the end of being like, there's other movies where Denzel is doing like the Hurricane and Training Day, and I thought Rue kind of took those and was like, everything he does in those movies, he's actually doing here as well. I thought Robert did a great job at Anthony Hopkins' Hannibal Lecter, and actually downgrading the sequels and the prequel to elevate this performance. But I thought Rue was just able, his offense on, or I guess his defense technically on Malcolm X was just so strong. So I went with Rue.
All right. Mark, I'm sorry, but your vote is going to decide nothing because I voted for Amaru. I think they're both phenomenal performances. They're probably the 2 best picks you could have picked in this category. I just think that Rue did a good job of pointing out that while Hopkins created a great character in Silence of the Lambs, he did a phenomenal job at that role. How Denzel Washington was able to show a more variety of performance and a character arc and kind of growth. He was able to kind of dig into the role more than just being just this kind of singular character.
All right, Mark, your vote doesn't count. Where would you have gone on mine?
H, I got a clean sweep. I also went wrong. Yeah. Most based on what you guys just said. I think probably that was a big moment. Was when I think Robert did try to kind of say like a lot of his other performances are better. They did that, and then Rue came back with a bunch of examples of like elements of those other performances show up in his Malcolm X performances. Yeah, it's kind of a done deal from that point on.
All right. Well, here we are. We're going to the bonus round. Rue loves it. He loves making me write these questions. No, I'm kidding.
Yes.
Here's how the bonus round's going to work. I randomized what side of Fanzone this was going to come from, either fandom or general movies. Then I randomized the categories to decide what category from the remaining categories that weren't drafted in the regular match. I'm going to say the question, and then I'm going to say the question a second time. Once I have said the question twice, you can answer the question. Whoever answers first will be going first. You each get 45 seconds, then you each get 30 seconds. Any questions?
No.
If I continuously just get 50% on everything, can I just call it a wash? My stats continuously just be 50-50 against me. And for
okay. The side that was randomized was fandom.
Of course.
The category that was randomized was Disney Pixar.
Ugh.
Okay.
Your question is, and it will be in the private chat. Your question is, what is the best one-off Pixar film? What is the best one-off Pixar film?
Coco.
I'll say Ratatouille.
Oh, okay. All right. I like it. That's actually not the one that I thought you were going to pick. I'll take the judges out. I'm going to stay on screen to give you guys your times, your 10-second warnings. Rue, you spoke first with Coco. You were going to go first. You have 45 seconds when you start talking.
I don't think there's a better Pixar movie that has better characters, better emotional resonance, better music, better visuals, better character arcs, a better villain than Coco. When they sing Remember Me at the end, everybody tears up like crazy because of everything you built up from beforehand, especially between the villain of his actual dad versus great-granddad, who you think is his great-granddad. The arcs you get from Ernesto becoming the hero to the villain, and whatever his name is, Hector, coming from this random guy to becoming the great-granddad, and Miguel being this just lovable character, one of the greatest side characters, and the dog behind him, and his grandmother throwing chanclas. It's relatable, it's hilarious, it's beautiful, it's emotional, it's everything you want in a Pixar film, and it elevates to its highest form.
Time. Robert, 45 seconds when you start talking.
I think what's something that resonates with me the most when I think about Pixar films is the idea of the underdog story, that greatness could come from anywhere, because that's what I like to believe in myself. And I don't think anything does that better than Ratatouille. The whole point of the movie is that anyone can cook. Greatness can come from anywhere. It's funny. It's emotionally charged. The villain is good. Skinner is unrelenting. The idea that you have to overcome not only your own fear of self, but how it is that your family views you and how it is the outside world views you. And can you do something beyond what is inside of you? Can you motivate yourself to that point? It's all built within the idea of Ratatouille. It deserves a sequel because of how resonant that message is for someone like me.
Okay. Rue, 30 seconds.
My biggest issue with Ratatouille is I don't remember the rest of the ensemble. I have to remember who Skinner is. Have to remember who the chefs are. And yes, that theme is there, but Hector is and Coco is the ultimate underdog. He lost. Who lost for generations. He had to overcome his own family not believing him, and that mirrors Miguel's thinking his family doesn't believe him. So that same thing you see in Ratatouille, you see in spades with Coco, but also remembering all the different characters that are in there, from the guy from Chicharron who loses the guitar, to Coco, to his grandmother, to all his aunts and uncles. Just all beautiful and amazing. Ratatouille is forgettable.
Robert, 30 seconds.
I think you can remember the partnership with Linguini. I think you can remember his relationship with Emile and his father. All this is built into what happens with Ratatouille. I'm sorry to say it. While I do love Coco, there was a movie that came out very similarly around a similar time. It was called The Book of Life. And in some aspects, it did what we're trying to understand with letting people pass and trying to keep their spirits alive in a similar way to what Coco did. The music is good. Everything in Ratatouille makes you feel that you can be better than yourself, and that's important.
No, I feel like so sorry, Robert. I feel like I say this every time, but man, I wish that was a full round. Okay.
What were you saying? No idea what's gonna happen.
I think I do.
I don't. Oh.
And yes, I was between Ratatouille, Wall-E, and Up.
Yeah, Ratatouille just like disappeared from my brain for some reason. And so did Coco, frankly.
Yeah,
and I love both of those movies so much. And for some reason, I'm like, someone's gonna yell Up, and then Rue was like Coco, and I was like, oh yeah, good, great, this is gonna be good. Oh. And then you said Ratatouille, and I was like, excellent. I don't have to hear about, well, the first 10 minutes are good, and then after that, it's just,
I wanted to avoid that if at all possible.
Because that's exactly what I heard.
Oh, it was coming. It would have been coming. New speed round question. Is the NFL scripted? Go. We have no idea.
Indeed.
I think it might be.
Yeah.
The best, not to get on a tangent, the best thing about them wearing these fucking hats right away, like championship, is that apparently I learned, I didn't know this, they make all the clothes for both teams right away, and then they send the clothes that don't get used to like people who need. That's fucking cool. I love that shit.
Tim,
you go to some third world nation and find out your team was a champion.
Yeah. Tim, the fact that you're just finding this out shows me how young you are and how old I feel now.
That's fair. That's fair. I might cut this out. I might leave it in. We'll find out. I also have not, like, I've always followed the Packers, but this was like the first year where I was like, oh, all the teams. I just like football. So I learned a lot this year, which would probably make you feel old, Rue. Who's going first? Mark. Let's stop talking about football. Let's find out who's going to the contender match. Hit it off.
Yeah, this is really tough. I think I ended up going with Robert. Yeah. Also, I don't know why I said I think I ended up going with Robert. I wrote down Robert.
It's on the board.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I leaned just a little bit more towards him. I think I just kind of liked his argument of like this is the story of kind of how greatness can kind of come from anywhere, and it's how we kind of want this greatness to kind of come from ourselves. And I feel like he was also able to at least adequately show that his movie also is deep rooted in emotion, and kind of like how I think Rue tried to come back and like release for that. So that's where I ended up going with that one.
Brian, you get the hard job. I went with Rue. I thought that this was great. Like I said, I wish it would have been a full time, but I thought that both openings were really strong. I don't normally love it when people take the Rue approach in the last 30 seconds of just like trying to like spit out as much information as humanly possible, talking really fast. I feel like it can almost be a detriment to you. But in this case, I thought it worked for Rue in that he got a lot of info out that I agreed with, and that he not only I agreed with, but he convinced me in the sense that he talked about how the emotions that Robert was talking about in Coco, or in Ratatouille rather, also transcend over to Coco. And that while the characters of Remy are interesting, the character of Remy is good, the rest of the side characters don't necessarily come through. And then listed off some characters from Coco that were really strong. So I thought they both hit on the emotional and memorableness of the movie, but Rue was just able to kind of edge it out a little bit for me in the last 30 seconds, where I thought Robert didn't totally convince me in that last 30. Brian, once again, we must ask the question. Am I crazy?
Yes, still.
Okay.
I didn't want to ruin Rue's streak, so I can give you half a point to Robert, a half a point to Rue.
Oh, good, good.
So we're going to another speed run. No.
Sure, let's do it.
Yeah, no, this is a hard one to judge because it's like Robert was kind of going more on theme and kind of the theme of the underdog and all this kind of thing and how that applies to his movie, whereas Rue is kind of applying more relying more on like the emotion of his story and the character of his story. So it's kind of like I had to kind of decide which one kind of weighed me more. In the end, I leaned Rue.
Wow. That means your winner is Amaru Moses. Let's get into some post-match interviews. Robert, hell of a match. That was crazy. You won the first 2, or no, 1 and 3. I think you won. But so it was a pretty back and forth type of match. I think you've been playing great in this league for a while, but this felt to me like maybe your closest match, in the sense that like you guys were this was a clean fight the whole way, and you guys were neck and neck the whole time. What are your thoughts coming right out of it?
Yeah, it's very similar to my Boatman match, but that one we each won each other's point on one thing, and then it came down to the last vote and a speed round that I felt pretty good about, but I thought I would lose. So this one we won our points. We each did a sweep, so it was as even as it could be. Yeah, I wasn't thinking of Coco. That's probably the one I could have argued the best, but Rue got in there first. I wasn't thinking about the concepts of what I wanted to, the specifics of what was going on with Ratatouille. I just wanted to indicate kind of why it's important to me and try to build off of that. But it wasn't enough. I have no shame to losing to Rue. We talk about debate as much as we talk about anything and how we feel about how each other's matches went. In the Brian match, Rue was very nice to throw a comment on the YouTubes about how he thought you judges were nuts for how the speed round went in that one.
Most people.
I just changed my vote. Robert wins.
Oh, okay. Rue was incredible today. I was happy to just keep pace with him, and he's definitely worthy of going to contendership and winning this belt. I was just happy to get as close as I could.
Robert, this does put you out of this picture, but you'll be back later in the season. We've got a tournament coming up and multiple title pictures to go for the rest of the year. So when you come back, I always ask this question of is it someone new? You want someone new, or do you want revenge on Rue? Do you want to try to get to Brian again? Like, do you want to go for the belt again? Like, what is your prospects going forward?
If I had to do revenge, it would be against Nazario, because I felt like I should have won that one, and I feel like his silly argument in the speed round was silly, and I can't believe it didn't work. I can't believe it worked out the way it did. If I went with someone new, I would really like to debate like Bill. I'd really like to debate Coho. Someone who I have a lot of respect for in their debate acumen, and I'm just curious how my style measures up with them. So if you split it out in either means, I would take any of those people.
Absolutely. Robert, congrats on a match really well played today, man. Congrats. We are going to move over to the winner who's moving to a contendership. Rue, so many things to unpack here. One, you get the win today, so you're moving on to the contender match. Actually, yeah, let's just start there. Phenomenal performance. Even in the ones that you didn't get, all the judges were pretty much on the same page of like, this was really close. So what are your thoughts coming out of it against Robert?
First and foremost, Brian, don't forget, I told you that I thought they were absolutely insane that they gave Kirk that Star Trek point over you so you could put my name back on the board.
Okay.
Second,
keep you in.
Second, it went about exactly as I thought it would go. Robert is right. Me and him talk about debate a lot. We really both love this league, and we've been wanting to play each other for a long time. So I'm really happy with how it went, especially because I won, of course. But I was really hoping that it would go down to Brian, just because I really wanted it to be like not immediately a 2-1, and like it felt like me and Robert were neck and neck the entire time. So going down to that final vote kind of felt like how it should have went. Robert debated his ass off. We usually have a much different style, but coming into today, dating this, the Commanders got their behind whip, so I had not the energy that I normally had, and I'm also even though I love yelling here, I'm also trying to do what I do with trivia and try to have a lot more fun, or a lot less stress. So like yelling is fun. I love yelling. I love arguing and debate. I love doing that. But there are times where I'm like, my mood right now is I'm gonna calm it down. And I started to get up to where I normally get. But I really enjoyed this match. Robert, like I said, Robert played his ass off. But I'm happy to come away with the win.
Yeah, no, this was super exciting. I'm happy with it as well. And let's move on to what's next for you, because you got a contender shot now. So you're moving on, and I know who you're playing. You are going to be playing in 2 weeks. You are going to be playing Andrew James Barr.
I love it.
What are your thoughts?
I have not played him before. I want to play him. So that is great. I like that matchup because it's somebody I haven't played before, and Barr is also another very close dear friend.
I think that's going to be super exciting. But what's even more exciting is you won our event at the beginning of the year, the Last Word. You won that a few weeks ago, so you already have the title shot in your pocket. We know if I haven't announced it to the public, I feel like I have, but if I haven't, we know when that match is going to happen. That's going to happen after our break in the middle of the summer. We're going to take a break from Fanzone while some other stuff is happening on the channel. When we come back, the first match back is going to be you versus whoever the champion is for the title. Unless you are the champion, of course. Then you will have to, then you can use it at a different time. But so how does this make you feel going into the contender match? Are you still going to go guns blazing, or are you going to feel a little bit more relaxed because you have that title shot in your pocket?
Honestly, I think me going in more relaxed into anything, quote unquote, is more guns blazing, because like again, not stressed, not trying to like look at notes, really trying to just work my brain and get better at listening and actually debating instead of going off of like what I thought. So I'm glad I have that, because I know like I lose, I got that shot there, and it might make me a little more dangerous because I'm like, hey, I got nothing to lose, so I'm going for it.
Yeah, absolutely, Rue. I'm so excited for you. I think this is going to be this could end up being the season of Amaru Moses in debate. I'm looking forward to it. Rue, we'll see you later. But I want to thank Mark and Brian one last time for judging this one with me. Thank you guys so much. This was a hell of a match. Thank you to Robert and Rue. Thank you to everyone behind the scenes who helps make the show run. I have been Tim. We will see you guys next week with a bit of an undercard to that contender match. We got Will Cohen going up against Chadwick Webb. My brain hurts already, but we'll see it. I'm looking forward to it. We'll see you guys next time with another great match. Until then, have a great night.
There we go. Thanks a lot. Come again. won't forget what you've done for me here today.
I would prefer that you do.